Hi, Steve. Welcome to Heaven's Metal Magazine. This
Thank
interview's
you,
been a long
Doug.
time coming.
Yes.
So, this photo shows the artist in a blatant publicity stunt, but I've heard a conspiracy theory that this out of print issue of Heaven's Metal is buried in this glacier in Vietnam. And I need to go right to the source and find out what the story is behind that.
I'm pretty sure that is correct. It was meant to be a time capsule. It wasn't supposed to be uncovered that soon, but global warming and climate change and all that stuff, these things happen faster than we think.
Yeah, boy, I tell you what. So, you've done both the role of producer and director. Which do you like doing more and why?
Yes. I tell people producing a movie is filmmaking minus all the fun parts. So definitely I prefer to direct, but in this case, my friend Seth Worley, who I've worked with, man, for like 20 years. I think the first time I worked with him, he was 19. I actually met him because the first movie that I directed was a movie with Michael W. Smith called The Second Chance,
Remember
and
that?
we needed a big we needed a scene in a big mega church where Michael plays the associate pastor, and they've invited the pastor of their sister church, is a urban predominantly black church, to come and speak to the mega church. And when the pastor is looking out over the audience of this mega church and telling them about their needs and realizes nobody's paying attention, he has to take the pledge card and out of disgust just flicks it into the audience and says, "You know what? Keep your damn money." So we needed to find a church that would let us shoot there where one of the actors could utter a mild swear word. And I didn't think that was going to be easy, but thankfully, the music pastor at a big mega church in outside of Nashville called Brentwood Baptist was a friend of Michael W.'s, and so he said, "You know what? I think you can work it out to let us let you use our sanctuary." So we did the scene. We had hundreds and hundreds of extras, and it all went fine. And then afterwards, the music pastor said, "Hey, I don't normally do this, but my son is a filmmaker. Is there any chance you'd be willing to look at his DVD demo reel?" And I was like, "Of course, I'd be happy to look at it." And it turned out it was great. And so his son, even at 19 years old, was a fantastic filmmaker. So I hired him to do second unit photography on the second chance, and then he worked with me again on Blue Light Jazz. And then he like directed a music video for The Perfect Foil. And you remember that Kickstarter video where I'm at the Department of Music Veterans trying to get my license to rock renewed? Did you ever see that?
I don't think I
Uh,
saw that Kickstarter video.
yeah.
It sounds
Oh,
funny.
it's good. He directed that as well. So, and then he's had me act in some of his projects. So when this situation came up, Sketch was a movie that he'd gone to Hollywood to hopefully get made. And even though he came really close, ultimately no studio wanted to make it. So he moved back home to Nashville with his family. And I met up with him just to catch up and asked him what was going on with Sketch. And he said, "It's dead. Nobody wants to make it." And I was like, "No, no, no, it's too good."
Yeah.
So he said, "Well, if you got any ideas," and I'm terrible at raising money, but I had money raised to do it in a matter of weeks. So we shot it 3 years ago, and here we are.
Wow. Sketch is brilliant. I love the movie. I love the imagination of a child, and I love that this movie really kind of brings that to life, literally. And
Yes,
really enjoyed it. I really hope it catches on with, fans of Stranger Things because it's got weird, supernatural, freaky stuff, and there's a
right.
great theme. I love the dad character. Just great job, and tell your buddy he did a
Yes,
great job
Tony
too.
Hale is fantastic. And, he's a fellow Christian. So it was really fun working with him on this project. And it was kind of, most of the characters that he plays are pretty quirky.
Mhm.
And it was fun to see him play just a fairly normal dad who's just concerned for his kids, and doing what he thinks needs to be done to help them deal with their grief.
Yeah. So, what is a change or maybe an addition to the movie that might not have made it had it not been for you? Any ideas or an
Well,
idea you collaborated on? You had and you
yes,
collaborated on.
the script was really good by the time I got involved. Seth had sent me the first act of the first draft of the script like 5 or 6 years ago, and I gave him a few notes, but I mean, wasn't anything big. Um, when he had the rough cut, I gave him a few more notes, but I mean, he really is the brains behind it and the creative mind behind it. And so in this case, I was really a facilitator and an encourager, and ultimately, I think just being able to get the movie made and find a distributor and all those things were my main contributions.
It sounds like a fun job. I'm curious how much stress is involved.
Yeah, it's actually not that fun of a job, and it's very stressful. Um, yeah, it's like producing, yeah, it's filmmaking minus all the fun parts. So it's a lot of deal making and a lot of dealing with agents and potential distributors and budgets and trying to figure out just how to get this movie done. In this case, the actual filming went really smoothly, and Seth edited the movie himself, which is not typical. You normally don't want the director editing the movie, but he did a great job on that. The biggest challenge we had was when it came to the visual effects because there's so many of them, and in this case, every monster had to look differently because each monster ultimately is created with crayon or Sharpies or chalk. And so that means they have to be destroyed in different ways based on what they're made of. And so Seth, who was really good with visual effects, and that's one of the reasons that I felt we could pull it off on a budget. He initially was not into liking anything that he was coming up with, and so the VFX uh, just sort of schedule, which I thought would be done in a matter of months, they took almost a year and a half.
Wow.
So ultimately, it looks great, and I'm glad that Seth stuck to his guns because I think he ultimately ended up being a better movie because he was so particular about how he wanted the VFX to look. But it took a while.
Nice. What did you learn about yourself in the making of Sketch?
Um, I learned that I'm not as patient as I thought I was,
Hmm.
and I I learned really producing is strictly in this case was strictly I guess servant job. Um, it was not about me in any way. I was not the star or the director or uh, the focus of anything. I was just there to help it get made as and be as good as it could be. Um, so from that standpoint, it was a good experience, and yeah, in some ways a humbling experience. There were times when people would get upset with me for stuff that was definitely not my fault, but it was also a job that kind of required for me to take a certain amount of take a certain amount of crap and smile through it. And I'm not particularly good at that, but I got better doing this movie. So yeah, it was a good experience, but probably not one that I'd soon repeat.
Nice. I've trained myself never to ask questions that can be answered with one word, but I'm not sure how to transform this question about if Janet ever appeared. The Good Place TV series
Right.
has this character, and my wife and I love that show. And we saw the actress who plays Janet in your movie. It was a real delight.
Darcy Carden was so good, and watching her and Tony do their scenes together is like acting masterclass, right? Just the way they
Mhm.
banter with each other. Uh, it's like watching Tracy and Hepburn in the old days. Like they just had a thing. Um, and it's funny when we were looking to cast that role, uh, trying to figure out who would be a good actress for that part. Uh, Seth wrote his list, and it was Darcy Carden, Darcy Carden, Darcy Carden. That's how much he wanted Darcy Carden. and ultimately we were really thrilled to be able to land her, and she was a delight.
I love it. Kudos to Seth for sticking to his guns yet again.
Yeah.
That's awesome. I heard that you trained for a couple years learning the Meisner technique. What the heck is that?
Yes, so Meisner is an acting technique that is especially preferred by a lot of film actors. And Sanford Meisner is no longer with us, but he just had a lot of great thoughts about how to inhabit a character and how to create the illusion of reality, even though it's imaginary circumstances. So I took those classes before I directed Blue Light Jazz because I just wanted, I'd done some acting before and taken some classes in high school and college, but I wanted to take a deeper dive. And it was really helpful, especially helpful as a director. In this case, you know, nobody really needed my help when it came to performances. We already had two fantastic actors, and the kids were really good as well. And Seth was ready to make the movie, and so he had a great relationship with all his actors. I think one of the things that happened with Tony Hale is that even though he's primarily known for comedies, um, he really wanted to ground this character in what he felt was believability. And so there were times when scenes that are in predominantly comedies tend to have buttons at the end where somebody says something quippy at the end and it's called a button. And there were a few times when he told Seth, you know what? I wouldn't say that button. I'm terrified in this situation. It doesn't deserve a quippy funny line at the end. And Seth, went with Tony's instincts. So he was able to ground the character, I think, in a way that makes him really believable. And because Tony's a dad and I'm a dad and Seth is the father of three kids, I think we all brought that into the filmmaking process as well, just that sense of what it's like to be a concerned parent.
Yeah. Kudos for making a dad look cool and not just a Dumbo, the butt of every joke.
Right. Oh, I love that too. Because yeah, he's doing his best, right?
Yeah.
He's doing the things that he thinks he should be doing. Um, we talked a lot, and Tony talks a lot in interviews about we all know what a helicopter parent is, but it's sort of even more common these days to be a snowplow parent where you're going ahead of your kid and you're trying to take away all the things that are going to be hard for them, right? And that we know are going to hurt them or cause them pain. And ultimately we don't do them a favor by removing all those obstacles. And so in the case of his daughter Amber, he's just trying to keep her from having to suffer grief, but there's no way to do that. She's sad and she's got to figure out a way to process her grief. And so that's kind of the lesson that he learns in this movie.
Nice. So I want to transition to the long-standing reason why we've needed to have you interviewed for Heaven's Medal. I want to talk about Guardian. And I want to
Yes.
talk about your role as a producer there. And first of all, how prepared were you to take on a heavy metal band? And what is heavy metal from your eyes? And how did you respond to that aesthetic and kind of massage it, come up with something fresh?
Well, first of all, I love talking about Guardian, and I especially love talking about the Buzz album because for whatever reason, I was just thinking about it this morning. Um, so what happened was I didn't really know any of the guys from Guardian, but I was doing the Squint International tour, and we had Dakota Motor Company opening for us. And about halfway through the tour, Peter from Dakota Motor Company got an invitation from MTV to host an MTV show. And it was an opportunity too good for him to pass up. So he took the gig, and that meant that Dakota Motor Company had to leave the tour. And it was a drag because they were a great opening act. It was going really well, worked really well with the music I was making, and I think Hocus Pick was on the tour as well. But and they were great as well. But I was really sad to see Dakota Motor Company go. the head of their record label is was Jim Chafee at the time, and Jim Chafee is one of my oldest and closest friends. And he said, "Hey, I know Dakota's leaving the tour. What do you think of Guardian coming on the tour to replace them?" And I'm like, uh, aren't they kind of a like a California metal hair? Like, aren't they like that? Doesn't seem like a good idea to me. And he was like, yeah, I mean, but they're good guys, and I think he'd be doing me a big favor if you took them on the tour. And I don't think I would have done it otherwise, but because it was Jim Chafee, I was like, okay, yeah, let's do this. And so they show up midway through the tour, and we just hit it off immediately. And and so I would hear them play every night, and I mean, they were a really good band. They played great. They were all good on their instruments. Tony's an exceptional guitarist, and Dave was a great bass player, and Carl, their drummer, and um, you know, uh, and their lead singer. Who's the name of their lead
Jamie
singer?
Rowe.
Jamie. Jamie sounded great. So, but this was in 1993, 94,
Sounds right.
and it was that era where a lot of metal bands went from playing arenas to clubs in the space of like 6 months. Like grunge had taken over, and especially bands like oh, Poison or oh geez, what's the band with the umlaut? Motley Crue.
Yeah.
Like they went from being the biggest bands in the country to not really quickly. And so by the end of our tour, uh, we'd all got on great. I think we were in Europe finishing up the tour, and the guys said, "Hey, is there any chance you'd want to produce our next album?" And I was like, I hear you guys play every night. You're a great band, but the style of music that you're doing has kind of shrunk really dramatically, really quickly. And so I'm not sure how we would approach this album. And they were like, "Well, we're looking to you to kind of help us reinvent our sound." So based on that, we uh we went to the studio and we just tried to keep what was great about Guardian, but not repeat something that they'd done before. And the process was a blast, and I love that album. I still think it's one of my favorite things that I've done. And yeah, we just had a great time. They're very big practical jokers, and some of their jokes got me a little bit in trouble. But maybe someday I'll tell you about those.
I've heard about the Tourette's joke.
Yes. Oh, you heard about the Tourette's?
Yeah,
That was the best one. That was how the tour started out.
that was
Is
great.
you know, Dave saying that Jamie had Tourette's and that his medication hadn't arrived yet. And so that went on for like 2 weeks, and I'm the only one not in on the joke. So I think the only reason they finally told me that it was a joke is because we had like a pastor backstage, a youth pastor, something praying. And, because this was so serious, I said to the youth pastor, I didn't want to say what it was, but I said, Jamie's got a thing going on and we needs his medication. It'd be great to pray for him too. And I think that's when they decided, okay, this joke has gone too far.
That's good. There's across the street, two houses down, there's this family that has a dummy, like a kickboxing dummy, that's perched up in a chair with a baseball cap on. And I was told that he just sits there all the time, like something's wrong with him. And I think I even prayed for him before I found
Oh,
out he
wow.
was a
Not
dummy.
knowing that it wasn't real.
Yeah.
That's beautiful.
Yeah. Um, I think if my memory serves me correctly, I saw that tour in San Antonio, and Guardian had just done, and they were touring the Swing Swang Swung album, which was an acoustic album. And I heard
Right.
all those songs rocked up, which sounded
Right.
great, which kind of showed the strength
Yes.
of those songs.
Yeah.
I'm curious as to how you corralled and how you produced Tony Palacios. He's a killer guitar player. I mean, this guy
Yes.
is amazing. And you come from a new wave pop background, you know rock and roll, you know the spirit of rock and roll, but have
Right.
you ever have you ever dialed in guitar sounds before and all that technique, and how'd you do
Yes. Well,
that?
we've done a lot. Like everything that I'd done was fairly guitar heavy, and then the Squint album was in particular. guitar heavy. And at that point, we weren't even touring with a keyboard. We were touring, I think, with two guitars and bass and drums. Um, so I didn't have, and of course, with Chagall Guevara, that was all guitars all the time, and
Good
all
ones
about
too.
guitar sounds, and getting the right amp and uh, the right setting. And that album was mixed with no digital processing, uh, so I was really into the sound of guitars. And the my engineer Russ Long was also, a really good collaborator. And I think, there it's not that there was tension isn't the right word, but there were things where, you know, I don't think the guys weren't always 100% sure about where I was trying to take them on that album. So there
Mhm.
was some give and take, but ultimately I think they were really happy with the way that album turned out, and I think happy with the way it sounded as well.
It stood the test of time. That album, Bottle Rocket. There's so many things I could talk about, like the pause during Lion's Den. Uh, just
Oh, right. I love that song. Yeah, yeah.
yeah, it's great. Jamie Rose vocals. How was it a challenge, and how did you turn him loose or tame him? What did you do with his voice?
Man, Jamie's a great singer. There
Hmm.
wasn't a whole lot to be done. I think it was mostly just finding the right mic for him. And it's been so long, you can't remember. I feel like maybe we used a ribbon mic for his voice, but he could do just about anything, and 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 was really good with challenging rhythms. Yeah, he was just great. I mean, really, there was no weak links in that band. They were all really strong, and it was really fun making that record.
I agree.
I like
First
working with
class.
bands anyway, but my experience up before then had been with uh primarily with Newsboys, and they didn't do an album with just the band until Take Me to Your Leader. So working with Guardian right before I went to the Take Me to Your Leader album was also a good experience because we were just working with the band, and then I went to do the Take Me to Your Leader album, and that was the first time the Newsboys just worked with the band members. So I think it actually helped that album as well.
Excellent. How did it feel when Kurt Loder on MTV News was talking about you and song titles like Jesus is for Losers and Live R?
Right. Yeah, well, no, it's fun because back in the day, that's how I got my this Kurt Loder and MTV, and he just had a thing. He was a journalist that I already liked from Rolling Stone, and so to hear him actually on MTV News talking about stuff I was doing was something I didn't necessarily think would ever happen.
How did Chagall Guevara? I know you've played more than once, but how did that first big album, Never Blowing Up, did that rattle you at all? What was your experience looking back on that?
Yes, every band has stories, and uh, we knew we had made a really good album, and uh, like many bands, we weren't happy with the way it was handled by MCA Records, uh, and we're disappointed with the response sales wise. But as disappointing as our sales were, our unsuccessful rock band was still more successful than all MCA's other unsuccessful rock bands. And so they wanted us to do a second album. And we were so disgusted with MCA that we were like, we would rather not be a band than have to do another album for MCA. So we did felt like a year-long standoff, uh, where we couldn't record anything because if we did, MCA would own it. And MCA was acting like, well, we're not going to let you off the label. And so the standoff finally got resolved, and they uh, released us from our contract. But at that point, the band was so exhausted and broke that we just kind of broke up.
Uh, we all loved it. Any comments on Chevelle? Um,
Yeah, they're playing in town like next week or something like that. I saw them. Uh, this would have been, man, I can't remember. Like, that might have been pre-COVID. They played in town, and they sounded great. It was really good seeing them again. That was the first time I'd worked with Steve Albini was on the Chevelle album, and it was a little crazy because they showed up the first day without Joe, their brother. I was like, "Where's Joe?" Oh, we fired him last night. I was like, "Wait, what?" And so we went for the first 3 days working with Steve Albini with just drums and guitar. And this is before White Stripes, before anybody thought that was cool.
Yeah.
So, and then finally they let Joe rejoin, and that's when things got going because Steve Albini liked to record a band as a band, right?
Yeah.
But uh, it was a great experience for me. It's through that album I met Fred Armisen, and we became really good friends. And I became friends with Steve, and we ended up working again, years later on the Steve Taylor and the Danielson Foil album, which was probably my one of my favorite was my favorite week in a recording studio. It was a blast. And man, I'm so bummed about Steve Albini. I really admired him, and he is very much missed.
That EPK you had with Fred Armisen in the studio with Steve was the best EPK ever. It was so funny.
I know, man. Fred is like he goes places no other comedian will go.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I got to sign off now. I have limited time here, but really have enjoyed speaking with you.
Doug, it's been a blast. Thank you so much. It's good to see you again.
It's good to see you. And let's do this again sometime.
You got it.
All right. God bless you and congrats on the movie. Good,
Thanks.
good things.
All right.
All right. Enjoy that Chevelle show.
Yes.
Yes.